right, there we go. So these are things that are ongoing that we want to keep thinking about. 1 second here while I share my screen. Okay, everyone see it okay? All right, so just a reminder, and this is very helpful in any areas that you're in, if you can take some time to just remind people, if people are looking for resources, just remind them to either do one of the Catalyst School workshops that just happened, or to reread this guide. I think a lot of the things that are going to be helpful to them are there. With a lot of effort from this group went into updating that. So this is the link for it, and it's going to be a good opportunity for people to both refresh and think specifically about using the new criteria to their advantage. So I just have pretty much how I've been approaching this, and I'm very open to insight for how the meetings can be structured, but pretty much I've just been sort of taking from what's on the channels throughout the week and making sure it gets collected here so that we can have maybe a more, more conversational talk about it. So we don't necessarily have to talk about everything here, but there's space for it to do that if we want to bring things up. And if not, we can skip over and come back to it at a future date, especially if it's not particularly urgent for what's coming up. So Phil, I just we spent a lot of last after town hall on the VCA role and on really chronicling that into the guide. So maybe I'll just kick it to you if you want to say a few comments, and we want to keep the drafting of this guide going, which you've really been spearheading. So I'll just kick it to you for a moment.
Yes, I guess that there's been a lot of discussion about how we can actually improve the VCA system in the Discord channel. So if you do want to participate in that, we've got a few days left, probably up to about a week maybe, but 5 days would be ideal to finalize that document. So if you're here, you know about the VCA process and would like to participate in checking over it's the first time we've actually released guidelines. Up to now, they've just been kind of follow these set instructions given in the email and refer back to the CA guidelines. But as of this fund, we're kind of looking to create an actual document that can be followed by the VCAs. So yeah, reach out, participate with that if you're interested. The link is there on this document, so go and have a read of it. It is a collaborative process to get that done. Thank you.
Great. Okay, so here's the link to the draft, and you can eyeball it, and we'll, like Phil said, we'll try to take like 5 to 7 days. We'll do a last call on it. These are the questions that we came up with as far as process from last week, which one thing I wanted to just check with, and I don't know if that, maybe we can continue this conversation further in the channels, but one of the things we talked about was having me ask the circle whether they would feasibly be an arbitration body for some of the decisions following the assessing of the assessments. And I just want to make sure that the next circle meeting is tomorrow. So I can also hold that for 2 weeks, but that's going to be maybe a little close to being in the midst of things. So is this something that this group would like me to take up to the circle meeting and ask as a question, or do you want to?
I'd be for that, just to even gauge their feeling, whether it's inside scope, whether they'd want to expand the scope to include such a thing, because it's probably going to need discussion, and probably the circle should at least decide whether it is worth discussion.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'll frame the circumstances, and then I'll take temperature, and then I'll come back to the group and report. The thinking behind having the circle do it was they would be an external sort of no conflict type of a body that could look at.
And I think it's important just to say it's a test run, like for one fund, not to put it in place, but something, we need something. So with lacking of anything else, it's a possibility to use the services of the circle.
Okay, great. All right, so I will do that, and I'll come back with that answer. These are the, so if you're going to look at the draft here, it's nice to get a sense of these points. So there's a lot of discussion in that channel around it. I think most people in this group here have at least been in that space, and can certainly add to this conversation. Here are some of the key points from that discussion so that there's awareness around it. Okay. Anything else you want to say on that, Phil, or anyone else who's in the VCA discussion from last week?
I'm good for now, thanks.
Okay. Second, this is you're probably aware, I've posted this a little bit in the channels. There is a Treasury proposal. This fund, we have a community advisor challenge, improvements challenge, and a week ago or a couple weeks ago, a collection of some of the sort of long-standing members of the community started to suggest here that perhaps we would make ourselves a treasury, so that there was a treasury with a governance framework in existence that could be a model for other groups, and also so that we would be able to rapid fund some things that are needed in order for us to solve some of the ongoing issues as they arise, but also to be a little proactive about what we're building. So the link to the proposal is here, and to the governance framework draft also here. And I thought we could make this maybe a space to talk about that a little bit. I'll invite the contributors to say anything you'd like here, as we have some space for it, but also just a call for reflection on it from the community, and any kind of input, that things you see as potential here. May also be that everyone's real focused on what they're doing. Go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I think the only criticism that could be for that is that it cannibalizes all the other proposals in the CA improvement challenge. So have you looked at the current situation? I haven't. Have you looked like what kind of proposals they are, and should we still stick to the 50,000 or make it less?
Yes, so we have a lot of drafts and placeholders right now that are in that 20 number. I think maybe it does make sense to look at it again, maybe later this evening, to see the state of those. I know people are feverishly working. So that's a definite potential. We could adjust the amount of it if that's something that there's support for. But I think right now there's a good number of ones that don't necessarily seem like they're either going to come through at the last minute, or but not in a state, or they have been flagged for removal already. So how should we think about that as far as criteria? Should we try to make it a number that would allow other groups to also be funded? Obviously we want the other groups to also be funded, but
as a proposer in the challenge, it'd be better. I'd prefer if it wasn't such a big amount.
Okay.
It does risk pulling away from other proposals.
Great. Okay. So maybe as a takeaway, we'll look at where other things stand and try to make sure that we have it worked within there. Again, we're creating a model here, and so we want as many solutions as are being designed to be able to go and not leave, but also not leave anything on the table. Go ahead, Phil.
I wonder if I'm hoping that in Fund 9 there's more funds available for this type of work. For the last two funds, and this is something us as voters might want to consider, that for the past two funds there hasn't been a lot of money available for people working on the actual catalyst process. The CA challenge is essentially it. Up until Fund 6, there was always a distributed decision-making challenge that was put in. So it's an interesting development, but as someone that has been looking for funding in the distributed decision-making processes, it's been challenging. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
There are two different proposals for challenge setting. One is 1.5 million from Heinz, and the other one is 2 million from George, which are both aiming for full-time contributors for Catalyst. So if one of them passes, there will be a little bit more than 100,000. If not, we are back to square one.
Kenrick.
Yeah, I've been using like 10 to 20% of the challenge funds as a target for my own proposals. So that might be something you want to consider on this one. The other thing I've thought about, because someone raised a question on the one I wrote, and it was a good question, like, are we going to deliver a product, or are we going to deliver kind of reports? And I think the way I've written my proposal, it is more kind of reports that would get you to the point that IOG can decide whether or not to implement the ideas, because they're still the ones that are doing the development for the process. But it occurred to me that maybe it would be worthwhile for us as a community to put some into the development ecosystem to develop products to support this, because those funds tend to be higher. And if you could make a good case for how that supports the overall community as a product, that would be interesting.
Great. Additional comments?
I'd just like to point out that if this is going, I mean, my view on this is that if it's going to be part of like the core of Catalyst, like, this is what funds the rapid mechanisms that Circle deems necessary for the environment or the ecosystem. I don't know necessarily if it needs to be a product more than it needs to be ran by the community or kind of like maintained. And I don't know how that alters anything or changes anything, but anyway, that's just my opinion on it.
Phil.
The other option, or at least like, other than putting in a smaller Treasury development as a test, having some sort of challenge setting specifically for proposals in this, which have been discussed like before, but there are various challenges. I'm saying I did propose one that's not well written. I could probably share it in the chat and see if anyone wants to co-propose with me and help develop that maybe. Although there is only one day left. So I'll find it and put it in the chat and see if anyone likes the idea.
Okay. All right. So all topics are open at all times. I'll just try to move through them so that we can get a core discussion. And then if there's more, we can jump back into them. Does that feel good? Okay. I just wanted to make a space for discussion on sensing any F8 community advisor issues. There might not be anything that we want to necessarily talk about here. We certainly talked about this a lot recently, but anything that needs to be added here, I'm going to make some space for it.
How much coordination is there between yourself and Catalyst School? Notice, like, I was looking at their classes or whatever they're having on Zoom is for training CAs. And in my time, Eastern time zone, I mean, they are pretty early, or like 7 in the morning or 6 in the morning, my time.
Mm-hmm.
And those are the only two that were available. And it's that'd be even later for people on the West Coast.
Sorry to interrupt you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say it's even earlier for people on the West Coast, and the further out east or the further west you go.
Yeah. So pretty coordinated. So Phil led the one yesterday. That was in the afternoon though. That was like sort of mid-morning Eastern. So I think I think that, and now that they're passed, they are recorded and they're on the site. So if people ask, or if they have missed them, that I got a couple of those messages during town hall, you can just provide the recording. And it was very, very thorough, lots of questions, and yeah, so go ahead, Phil.
Also, the school is available to do one-on-one sessions, I believe. So if you do need to reach out and want specific information, and the time zone doesn't suit, believe they still have funding for one-on-one sessions.
One of the biggest things that I think as a core group should be thinking about that is like one of the main questions that's happening over and over is how do people make sure that because the reform started on Friday, some people have done it but aren't sure that they did it and want to make sure that it's confirmed. So that was Phil pulled up the how to check visually within that workshop. So, and it was also in the slides today from Victor. So that's an important thing that we can help people with, because it does inhibit their being able to be at peace about whether or not they're set to go. And then I've just been telling people as follow up, you'll start to get emails when things take off, so that they can look for those and not feel like they are in the dark about whether they're ready or not. Okay. So Ilya has been sick and is not feeling well. So I'm going to present this for him, although this is a huge body of work that he's created, and he's come to this role newly and this fund. So he's done us a good service of really understanding what the onboarding looks like for a CA. And he has this here in this onboarding chart. So his intention is to help people in the future who come to Catalyst sort of figure out how to orient themselves. So we want to put this here, not for review over the next few days, obviously, but we want to start having people take a look at it so that we can decide what any adjustments or feedback it might need, and then start to have something that we can adopt as a tool and a resource for new members as they're starting to come in. So I invite everyone to take a look here. If there's anything that I missed there, you want to put it in the chat, I will happily speak it out for you as you're not feeling well. But I want to call this out, and maybe over the next 2 weeks or maybe beyond that, once things start to quiet a little bit and we can really get this in a state of finalize. It's quite a body of work, so it'll be a good tool to have, and I think helpful for the future here. Good. Okay, updates for the community groups. These are just things that have been funneled through for announcement. We're looking to find some good general times for this group for weekly meetings for people. We have subcircle here, but really it's for the sort of people who are actively working on different projects to make sure those projects stay interrelated. For example, the communications team is working on things, and the onboarding education group is working on things, and we're thinking about how do we recruit people continuously, and how do we make sure people can stay informed easily, and how do we continue to grow our capacity to do this well and prevent issues. So that's nice to keep that in touch. So we have confirmed one on Fridays, and then in order to have just a second space, we're going to have that hopefully either Monday or Tuesday at 12 UTC. There's the schedule feedback here if you want to add your feedback. And pretty much we're going to have a space for dialogue as things are continuing to move, so that we can stay on the same page. And also then ultimately this will be an opportunity for me to hear anything that someone can't address because they haven't been able to come to a town hall or talk about it in a different place. So that's there together. We started just a YouTube channel. I attached it to the circle rep email so that we could have just our discussions easy to find in one place, sort of streamlined. And those also post to the Discord as well. You guys know all this stuff already. Anything we want to bring up here? No need to hold a meeting longer than it needs to be held. Is there any additional thing from anyone that's not been talked about, or any feedback or suggestions on process, how things are going?
Well, apparently 5 days ago, Victor Corsino has posted another Improve CAs challenge for Fund 9. The link is in the chat.
Great. So I'll add this in here.
They come and save the day every time.
Oh, look.
This time for 150K.
All right, that's good. So we'll put here, okay. Great, Tommy, thank you.
But yeah, Phil, I agree. Let's take another 3 months and make a proper one for Fund 9.
Yeah, okay. I'll withdraw that, but I'll keep a record of it somewhere. I'll probably, yeah, let's spend some more time like making better consensus of it. Thank you.
All right, anything I missed? Anything additional?
If you want, I could just give a very short synopsis of the proposal that Allison and I submitted.
Great, do it.
I don't think I need to share the screen. I'll just kind of describe it, but it's called Improving the CA Integrity, or something like that. Improving integrity of the CA process. And I kind of thought of it in 3 steps. One step is to integrate integrate development of reputation models with the work that Allison is planning to do in developing a digital identity for the CA program. She's written 2 proposals under the Accelerate Identity. And then there's a second aspect of the project that will be reviewing all the ideas on the Dropbox and then providing financial support to the leader of one of those to carry it through to a point where IOG can make a decision on it. So I'll be kind of planning to work with the community to kind of identify one that looks important, has a good leader, but maybe doesn't at this time have financial support to kind of carry it through. And then the third one is one that I'll be leading myself, which is to do an evaluation of the quadratic voting process as a possible way to improve how we do the star ratings. And I won't go into what that is, but one update on that I'm really excited about is there's a new and quite talented development team called Snap Brilla that has decided to develop on the Cardano network, and they wrote a really fantastic proposal and invited me to be an advisor to them in the ecosystem and the open source ecosystem development. And their goal is to replicate the capabilities of if you're familiar with Gitcoin, which is a very popular funding vehicle under the Ethereum community, they're gonna kind of try to replicate that model and bring it to the Cardano community. And completely independent of the work that my team had been doing, they have decided to kind of use the models that we were recommending. So I'm quite excited about that and hoping we could leverage that as part of the community advisors program as well. So, you know, I plan to look over all the proposals because I know there's some good ones. But that's the one that Alice and I submitted.
Okay, great. And any well, I guess people can dig deeper into it as they look. I think it's helpful to have that called out and talked about. Questions on that for Kenrick? Okay, good. All right. George.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I did make a comment on that particular idea. This is again the quadratic funding model says the voters are given X number of votes based on the ADA they hold. And so if there is a minimum, then it is 500 votes, 500 ADA. And if they have 10 million ADA in their account, it is going to be 10 million ADA votes. So it is a 1:1 ratio for voting. And the question I had on that was not to give that level of 1:1 and then try to reduce it with a quadratic model. Instead, why don't we have a set of rules which say, for example, a 500 ADA is 1 vote, and the max, whatever is the amount a person holds as ADA, is going to be 10. So we get the ratio of 1:10, not 500 is to 10 million, which is 1:20,000 or 200,000. So it goes way out of proportion. For a 500 ADA vote, it becomes invisible. So if a larger holder comes in. So that was rule 1. The rule 2 is to kind of say, how much is a person staked? So did he stake for 1 month? Did he stake for 10 months? So duration of staking is the second rule. So if you are staked for a shorter duration, you have 1 vote. If you stake for a longer duration, it is higher. That is again 10. The third rule is to say, okay, how much is the participation within the community? So if for example, I'm just starting, I'm 10 days into the system, Catalyst, so mine is 1 vote, and a person who has been in the system for multiple years or multiple months gets 10 votes. So you get a simpler voting system where a person is not totally invisible in the voting system at a 500 ADA vote, but still has a certain credibility. So not to create a problem with a voting number being too high, but to just create a set of rules which make sense. So it's again to see what is our current system and say, okay, what can be done.
Yeah, all of those are really outstanding ideas. So I would encourage you, if you're interested, to write a proposal to see if you can get support to work on them. And you can also certainly reach out to me. I'd be very interested in working with you on those ideas, because they're closely related to what we did under a project under Fund 4. But there's a lot more work to do to actually implement it and get it to be actually something the community can use. So I think that what excites me about the work that the Snap Gorilla team is offering is that they're actually going to build a platform that kind of builds the infrastructure for this, which is an important part of it. And then once you have that infrastructure, I think it can be refined in the way that you're describing. But right now, the infrastructure that we have is 1 coin, 1 vote. And the challenges to developing some alternative are significant.
Yeah, we are heading into the voting now, probably in a few weeks. So if you are able to correct it now, we don't really have to look at a quadratic model. If we simplify the voting system to, and it again depends on the max or ADA holders. Are they really interested in having a system which is skewed by them, or are they willing to support the more democratic process where we can have a certain magnitude which is acceptable? Are we going to have a 100 billion pesos or reduce the magnitude.
There are people in the community looking at those issues, but they're not actually easy. It certainly won't be done this round. The challenge is to actually develop, implement, test it, and then make sure it all works right are significant. But
Yeah.
IOG and others in the community are definitely looking at those issues.
Yeah, it is not escalated is what I feel, meaning if I'm given, if a 500 add up person says my one vote is against a person who has 200,000 from just one vote, will I vote? I become invisible. Why would I vote? So
Yeah.
it is a very critical from what I'm seeing, and it is not seen that way. Why should we delay it if it can be a simple simpler way to reduce it, and then if you want to further improve it? But I'm suspectful
Reach out to
the
me, George.
person
I'd
is
like to
not
talk to you
really
more
aware
about
of the magnitude. Sorry.
The tricky thing, George, is how do we agree on the change? How do we record? How do we decide? How do we decide that? So for that to actually happen, we need that concept that's called the DAO to be able to come together and come to an agreement. So it's great to have these various solutions, and various people are going to come up with various options. But how do we discuss that in a group? And then how do we bring that into the overall body? And how do we then, as ADA holders, vote on that change to implement it? So that's the challenge, because we can all just come up with cool ideas and discuss them, but if there's no way to implement them, that's where we are right now. So
yeah, the pattern is first thing is, do we agree that a person with a minimum ADA gets invisible in this? So we got to, as a max holder, what does our consciousness say? What is awareness? What does our awareness say to these? Even if you're a 100K holder, 500 is to 100K is a magnitude. So is 200 in that scenario. So it is a question of being aware now. What do we want to do? Do we want to say, oh, it is still the same system, I can't change it? Or do we want to a little more carefully say, what do we want to do? It is a simple correction. I'm saying don't make it 2,000 or like 2,000, 20,000 magnitude. Like we don't want to give that kind of an impression that a person's vote is invisible.
Yeah, I'm going to send you a link to our report on these issues. And they're extremely important, but they're not easy. It's not actually a simple change, but they're critical for long-term success of the community. So myself and others are working on that, and we'd love to have you as part of the effort. I'll send you a link.
Yeah, I'd put the comment, I commented to Nin. Nin is part of your team couple of times. So yeah, again, again, the emphasis is not that it is simple, simple 1:1 rule we are able to use, but we just have to say, okay, the vote doesn't get too much of a skewer. So even if we restrict it to a 1:100, it is a lot more meaningful than when we say the ratio is 1:20,000 and we are going to quadratically reduce it back. So do not create the issue, do not create the problem is my suggestion, not to accept that 1:1 is a right method. So both are.
We should take it offline though, George, I think, because it's kind of separate from this meeting.
Yeah.
It's a separate issue from this meeting.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Great. Good discussion. Scott is pointing out to me that I have the wrong time here for the scheduled meeting. So I just want to point that out real fast. Also for the recording, 21 on Fridays, not 11, and then 12 potentially for these. So 21 UTC on Fridays, which is very different than 11 UTC on Fridays. So there's that. Okay. I think that's it. I want to release everyone back out into the wild here, and hope that I wish you all the very best. Please let me know if there's anything I can do to be helpful over the next day or two, and we'll look forward to helping people come into this next phase together. Okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.